One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Do you have a strategy for your podcast? This has been a question that I've asked myself many times. It's been ones that I have proposed to my students, my clients, members of my community. And I think it's something that often gets overlooked. But as I am planning for Q2 of 2021, I have to talk about strategy. I feel like we all need to talk about strategy because it is such an important component of how I run this podcast, but also how I create any of my content. So we today are specifically going to talk about how to use dynamic content in a strategy for you to launch your next thing. Whether it's a book, an event, a program, a course, like whatever it is, we are going to talk about how to do that today. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? So I want to put out a fair warning to my brand new baby podcasters. Okay, I feel like this is story time. Like, gather around, little children. Let's talk about some podcast stuff. But I want to warn you that if you are brand new to podcasting, like you have only been doing this for 3 to 6 months, and maybe you haven't even launched your podcast, you are just still playing with the idea, and you have not put it out into the world, and you are publishing episodes on the regular, this topic today may be a little bit of a head scratcher. It might be. It may be a little bit over what you're trying to do, but also it's super important to understand before you get too deep into your podcast. So If that is you, if you've raised your hand and you're like, I think that is me, it's probably you. And I want you to take everything that you listen here today with a grain of salt. Okay? Maybe you don't listen to today and go put it into action. Maybe you listen to this episode today and you revisit it in 3 to 6 months. Whenever you have an established publishing schedule, you feel like you've gotten your groove and you know what you're doing. But I really, really want to just reiterate for my brand new baby podcasters, today's episode is a listen only, not necessarily a listen and learn. Now, for the rest of you, okay, this is a tough love conversation for you, okay? Like the newbies, they get a pass. But if you have been podcasting for 6 to 12 months, we need to have another discussion, okay? Because you need to be using dynamic content and your own podcast ads within your show. Okay, this is very important. It's something I'm so passionate about. And I think that a lot of people are missing the mark by saying, oh, I'll do that one day. Oh, I'll eventually figure that out. No more. No more. We are not doing that because you are missing huge opportunities for your business, for your podcast, for your free platforms, like whatever it is that you're trying to promote. Like, why are you podcasting? That's the first question we need to ask. And it's not for me. Like, I love to know why you podcast. I think it's fantastic. Like, I love hearing your stories and hearing the reasons why you're doing this and you're committing to showing up every single week. But I want you to know for yourself, why are you actually podcasting? Because if you don't have a goal, whether it's to create a deeper connection with your audience or establish your business or bring in leads, bring in new clients, bring in sales, whatever it is that you're trying to do with your show, you have to have that figured out because that is the root of how doing dynamic content and having your own podcast ads will really play out in the future. Because what I'm going to share with you today is a strategy that has helped me get more sales, grow my online community, and really establish myself as having it together. Okay? That's really one of the reasons why I get so excited about dynamic content. So first and foremost, I'm going to have a lot of references, podcast episodes, YouTube videos, and other places to point you to today, as we're talking. So I definitely want you to take notes. This is one of those, pull out your pen and paper, pull out a Google Doc while you're listening to this, or kind of bookmark things. If you're running, you're driving, and you can't do that right now, bookmark this episode to come back and listen to it, or at least at the bare minimum, go look at the show notes so you can see everything that we're talking about here today, how it plays out, how it applies to your podcast. So I'm going to tell you the show notes. So you're going to go to crystalprofit.com/episode 242 for everything that we're talking about today, because we're talking about dynamic content and you're like, wait, what is dynamic content? If you don't know what that is, I'll give you a brief overview, but then I want you to go listen to the podcast episode where I go into depth about what it is, how to use it, and all the things. But dynamic content at a super high level is the ads that you place at the very beginning of your podcast. And when I say ads, I'm not talking about just sponsored content, right? Where somebody pays you to put an ad spot on their podcast, or you read an ad and you say, oh, I love this company. Go get your free trial at blah, blah, blah. That is sponsored content. I'm talking about you promoting your own stuff, whether it's a membership, a book, a live event, a promotion that you're doing with an affiliate partner, whatever it is. Those are the things I'm talking about today. And dynamic content is something that I use within Buzzsprout. It's my podcast hosting provider. If you've been around here, you know I talk about Buzzsprout all the time. They're my favorite platform. It is what I recommend, and it's what I used. I've been using them for 3 years now. I love them. I love them so much because they have it at the center of their message. The principle of their business is to help independent podcasters. So they just keep coming out with these fantastic tools that really help us succeed. In dynamic content specifically, like what we're talking about today, is one of those that we've been asking about. I feel like this has been a question for years. When are we going to be able to put an audio clip at the very beginning of an episode or at the very end? and be able to make it timely, right? Like something like, hey, we have this promotion. Hey, we have something going on. Well, you can do that with dynamic content. So I want you to go listen to episode 220, where we talk about how to, use dynamic content with your own ads. I give you some ideas on how to use this, but that's not really what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to use dynamic content strategically. And the reason why I brought this up is, like I said, I'm planning for quarter 2 of this podcast and all of my content, to be honest. I have YouTube, newsletter, promotional things that I have going on, all the things, and I want them all to align. And dynamic content is a great tool that can help me get important messages in front of my audience whenever they're relevant, right? So a perfect, for example, that's relevant right now as of this episode airing is we're doing a big promotional giveaway in the middle to end of April. And I am going to be using dynamic content to talk about it. So pretty soon you'll see an ad that's placed at the very beginning of every single episode, not just the relevant, like current ones, but every single episode, whether it's episode 1 of this podcast, episode 50, episode 101, whatever it is, every single one of those will have this one ad, and that is dynamic content. And it'll be at the beginning, and it'll be about our giveaway that we're doing in April. If you're listening to this in the future and it's way past April 2021, then whatever ad is the very beginning of the show is whatever is relevant to what we're talking about now. Do you get that? Ooh, I feel like we're just like time traveled between podcasts, like reality and like future and past and all. I don't know. It's like, I'm not really a sci-fi person. So I tried with that analogy. It probably fell flat. But what I want to talk about today is the strategy of planning out your dynamic content in 3 easy steps. Okay. So I'm going to link in the show notes to, like I said, using dynamic content. I'm going to link to some YouTube videos that I've created to help you really understand this concept about how it works. But I really want to talk about 3 very basic things that I'm doing right now, like in real time, to prepare for what I'm going to promote over the next 3 months of the year. So first thing that I do is I look at my promotional calendar every single quarter. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I do things in quarters. Like it's just how my brain works. I have a wall calendar. I actually have a YouTube video I'll link to as well, where I talk about how I plan out my content every calendar. But I love that I can just look over and see like, oh, okay, like this is what's going on in the next 3 months. I don't have to look at the whole year and feel overwhelmed with like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, not enough time. Or look at, the next 6 months and say, how am I going to get it all done? Or there's not enough time. Or like on the flip side of that is I want to do everything in the next 6 months. No, my brain works in 3 months at a time. I only focus on what I'm doing over the next 3 months. So when I look at my promotional calendar, I make sure that I have plenty of time to go all out on my upcoming promotions. And then I ask myself, are these promotions that I need to add to my podcast using dynamic content? Previously, it was, do I need to, add in mentions whenever I'm creating my podcast content? But now I can add it to the dynamic content so it doesn't really mess up the jive of what's happening in the podcast episode. And so, like, here's a perfect for example. I'm just going to tell you what's coming up over the next 3 months. And in April, we have our giveaway. I've talked about it. We're doing a podcast review giveaway, and there's a few different reasons why we're doing it. I've been wanting to do a review giveaway for a long time because people ask me about it. So I'm doing it because, one, giveaways are so much fun. I'm going to be giving away copies of my book. I'm going to be giving away access to my course. I'm going to be giving away a huge grand prize. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell you all the things about the grand prize. This is going to be so awesome. But that's what's going to happen in April. And then in May, I'm doing an affiliate promotion that I can't quite talk about just yet, but it's going to be good. I promise you it's going to be so good. And then in June, we have our yearly BC Stack promotion, which is for people that are in kind of the blogging community that want to transition to podcasting. So that's what I'm concentrating on for April, May, and June. So those are the different types of content that I need to create dynamic ads for. So when I look at my promotional calendar, that's the first thing I do is I say, what am I doing over the next 3 months? Do I need to promote it on the podcast? And if so, what does that look like? Okay, so that's step number 1. This is what I want you to do. I want you to go and look at the next 3 months. You don't have to look at your whole year. You don't have to look at the next 6 months. Look at the next 3 months, even if you're not listening to this in quarter 1, quarter 2 of 2021, like you're listening to this in the future. Look at the next 3 months. What do you have going on? Are you launching something? Do you have a live event coming up? Are you promoting a book? Is your course like launching out into the world? Are you teeing up your membership? Or maybe you have a low ticket offer, whatever it is. Okay. You know your own promotional calendar and the different products and services and programs that you're offering. So first and foremost, look over the next 3 months. What are you launching? When are you launching it? And do you need to talk about it on your podcast? Okay. Step number 1. Step number 2 is to look at your content calendar. Okay, this is what I've done. So I have a very simple spreadsheet. Okay, I have tried to go the route of trying fancy like programs. I've done Asana, I've done ClickUp, but honestly, a simple spreadsheet is what works best for my brain. Because again, I can divide it up into quarters. Like each tab has its own 3-month period. And that's all I'm looking at. I'm not looking at the whole year. I'm looking at 3 months at a time. Again, it's just how my brain works. So I go to my content calendar, and since Buzzsprout added dynamic content, all I've done like to kind of change up and adapt my content calendar is I've added a column that now includes dynamic content. So I know this is like a super visual thing, but just bear with me for a second. So on my spreadsheet, I have, and I'll do a screenshot. I'll take a screenshot and add it to the show notes, but I have the day of the week that an episode publishes. Then I have the actual air date so I can keep track. Then I have the title or the topic of what I'm going to talk about. Then I have the actual episode number. Now, this is really important because if I throw in a bonus episode, I don't want to throw off my numbers and have everything like jacked up. So I like to look at the episode number. Plus, whenever I'm creating my episodes like I am today, I will write the episode number down on like a sheet of paper, or I'll make sure that I'm looking at like to see what episode is this? I need to reference the show notes for it. So I like having that. And then I have just general notes or promotions or anything like that in the last few columns. Well, recently I added the dynamic content column. That way I know what dynamic content ads are out there, like what is actually being promoted right now. And then I decide, well, how long do I want that specific thing being promoted, right? Because I don't want someone that listens to this podcast regularly to hear the same thing for like 4 months in a row. Come on, guys. Like you gotta change it up. Okay. You can have dynamic content for a while, like leave it there, because I think it's really powerful that people hear the same message a few times and hopefully then they take action. But it doesn't need to be up there for 3 to 6 months. Like, let's just be really, really honest. I'm a fan of like 2 to 3 weeks, even if it's the same message, but you just change it up a little bit whenever you change the cadence of how you say something, or maybe you change like it's a minute long ad and then I'm going to change it to like 30 seconds, or I'm going to change it to 5 minutes, whatever it is. I think that the act of changing it up kind of just interrupts people's brains to where they're not just hearing white noise when they listen to your ads. They are paying attention because they're like, oh wait, it's something new. I need to listen to this. I need to see what's going on. So what I'll do is I look at my dynamic content and I see, okay, I talked about this for 2 or 3 episodes. It was already in there. Now, when do I need to change it? When do I need to change it? Do I need to wait another week? Should I go in and talk about the podcast audits? Like these happen on a monthly basis. And it's something that people need to know about a week and a half, 2 weeks before they actually happen. So I will back my content up to make sure like, okay, this needs to start airing 2 weeks before they actually happen so people have a chance to register. And then I look down and say, okay, well, I'm launching something in 5 weeks. When should I actually start talking about the launch that's coming up? Because I don't know if y'all know this or not. Like in my profit podcasting students, shout out because you know this. This is a very, very important lesson that we teach in the program. But we talk about the launch runway of your podcast. And I want you to apply that same idea to what we're talking about here, because the sooner you start talking about this, the better. And I recently did a reel about my talk that I did at a Spark Christian Podcast Conference in 2020. And oh my gosh, y'all, this reel took off. And it was talking about launching a podcast. And one of my favorite pieces of that is, and I'll link to it in the show notes. It's one of my favorite YouTube videos, but it is Stu McLaren and Christy Wright. And they're talking about the idea of a launch runway and how a blockbuster movie doesn't just become a blockbuster movie because they just put it out there. Like I think about Disney or Marvel, right? Like y'all, I've known that Avatar, the next one, is going to come out. Like I think that they started talking about like 2 years ago. And I know that there's a Black Widow movie. We're huge Marvel fans, by the way, if you did not know. I know like the sequential order. I know there's a future Guardians of the Galaxy coming. I know there's a new Thor movie. I know that there is a Loki show. We're already watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We just finished WandaVision. Like all of y'all that watch Marvel, you're nodding along and you're like, yes, these are so good. Everybody else, you probably think I'm a huge nerd, but I have 3 boys, okay? And Chris Hemsworth, I mean, hello, it's why I agreed to say, yes, I will watch all of the Marvel movies with you. And can we watch Thor Ragnarok at least 4 more times? Okay? Like, we're just going to be really honest about this. But going back to the alliteration of Marvel and Disney, when they launch something, they start talking about it way, way, way in advance. So it's what I want you to do too. And you can use your dynamic content to make that happen. So when I look at my promotional calendar, I look at my content calendar and I see where can I drop in ads? Where can I actually make the dynamic content work for me? And then the third thing, and I'm just going to be really honest because I have not been doing this, but it's going to, like, it's on my to-do list, okay? I want you to hold me accountable for this, but
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
The idea in a perfect world is to have a dedicated URL that is only given out in your dynamic content so you can measure your results. Okay, I'm going to say that again. A dedicated URL that you only give out in your dynamic content to measure the results. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that if you have your own website or if you have a shortener link app like Bitly, or I know that there's other ones, I've used Pretty Links. I have a WordPress site and I will use Pretty Links and I can create whatever URL I want to get it to point to whatever web page, wherever I want it to go. So a perfect example is I have, whenever I did the DCA launch, I was an affiliate for Amy Porterfield's Digital Course Academy. And I was an affiliate in the September 2020 launch. And whenever I did this, I created links that were to like specific landing pages on my website. But I would say, oh, it's at crystalprofit.com/DCA. And that's where people went. Like that is a dedicated link that would take people to this specific promotion. Now, if I were doing that same launch all over again, what I would do is create the same web page, like duplicate it, clone it, whatever word your WordPress or website provider uses. Like some of them are duplicate, some of them are clone. I know Kajabi uses the word hang on, duplicate or clone? Hang on. Now I'm confusing myself. Either way, it doesn't matter. Duplicate, clone, all the synonyms for making a copy. And what I would do is take that exact same page that people could get to from anywhere. Like we're talking about traffic from your email, your social media, like YouTube, podcast, whatever. I would set up different funnels to see, well, when I say that on my podcast, are people actually going from the podcast? Or are they going from my social media? Or did they click on it from my email list? Or did they see that on YouTube? You don't know if you send them all to the exact same page. So instead, what you could do is I could have set up a page that said crystalprofit.com/now or /DCA yay. I don't know. crystalprofit.com/yay. I'm just saying whatever URL you want to set it up as, then that way you know, okay, I'm getting a lot of traffic to this page and I know it's from my podcast because I haven't mentioned this link anywhere else. Like it's like you can't find it. You wouldn't even know that this existed if you didn't go to my podcast and listen to it. So this is something I'm working towards in the future so I can have measurable data on how my content is working. I want to know, is my dynamic content, I don't know why I'm getting like a stutter when I try to say dynamic content. I'm like, dynamic, I don't know what it is. So we're just going to roll with it because that's how we do it here. So if anybody's listening and you're like, you have to speak perfectly on a podcast. No, you don't. You just got to keep rolling with it. Just keep on keeping on, right? But I want to know how dynamic content is working compared to any other organic places, or maybe you are doing Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever you're doing. You want to know how they are all working. And the only way to do that is to have specific individual URLs for each part of the funnel. Y'all, I know that this is definitely a more advanced piece of the puzzle, but it's one that I want you thinking about now. Even if you're brand new and you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, my head is about to explode. I don't even know. Or maybe you've been podcasting for a while, but you're just now kind of stepping into course creation or a membership or thinking about a live event. Like, that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to go and do all of these things right now, right this second. But I will advise you, first and foremost, you got to have a content calendar. If you don't have that, that's where we need to start. We need to start with the content calendar because all the things, like the more advanced strategies, you won't even be able to comprehend those at all if you don't first have a plan for your content. And what I do, I'll link to some YouTube videos, maybe like a playlist on, because I've done several, on how I create content, how I brainstorm content, because I think it's so important to have a plan. It doesn't have to go exactly as planned. Oh my gosh, y'all, if I told y'all what I really had on my calendar for January to March of 2021, it would not look at all like what I actually did this quarter. It wouldn't, because I changed things up. Like, ideas come at me. Y'all, Clubhouse came at me the first of 2021. I didn't have that planned. I hadn't even thought about it. I didn't even know really what it was or how I could use it. But yet that has been something that has been very successful in my podcast content calendar of Q1 2021. And so I just keep kind of shifting everything down, right? Like you get a new idea, plop it in your content calendar and save it for later. Don't let it escape you. This is why I think it's so important to have a running document, a running Google Sheet, whatever it is, like however your brain works. But you got to have a content calendar first to really take advantage and use this strategy strategically. I know. Strategically, it's all the same words, but you know what? Clone, duplicate, copy, I don't have to use fancy words, okay? Because I'm not a fancy word person anyway. Discombobulated is about as fancy as we get over here. And let's just be honest, it's just really fun to say, especially when you mess something up. This episode today is discombobulated. Wait, hang on, I got a better one. This episode is sponsored by discombobulated.com. I don't actually know if that's a Google domain or, a domain period, but I may go look it up as soon as I stop recording this because that just sounds like a really good URL to have. Oh my gosh, we're getting off on so many tangents. I'm going to wrap this up. So podcast show notes for today, crystalprofit.com/episode 242. Go look at all these resources. If you're just getting started and you're like, this episode today blew my mind, I don't even know where to get started, I'm going to link to everything we talked about in the show notes, but I want you to be using dynamic content. I want you to be thinking about how can I use dynamic content because, oh my gosh, it is so powerful. It is so dang powerful, and you're missing huge opportunities if you do not use this, if you just let it sit there. And by the way, if you're a Buzzsprout user, this is free. This is free. We haven't even talked about this yet. It is 100% free in your Buzzsprout account right now. It's not an upgrade. It's not, you have to be on the highest plan. It is free. It is free. If you are on a paid account, I don't know if it's on the free, like the 90-day free trial account, but if you have a paid plan with Buzzsprout, whether you're just paying the lowest amount or the highest amount, it's free. Use it. Please use it. And then I want you to come tell us in our Facebook group how you're using it, how it's working for you, and share some ideas so other people can learn and get even better with dynamic content. But that's all I have for you today. Oh my gosh, so much fun. I love this stuff. I love this higher level strategy because I think that a lot of y'all are there. I think that many of you have been listening to this podcast for a while and you're like, I want to level up and I want to help you. I want to show you how. So definitely try dynamic content, and I want you to share what has worked for you. I'm actually, when this episode airs, I'm going to put a post in our Facebook group, and I want you to share if you've tried it, if you've not tried it, if you're thinking about trying it, how you're going to use it, share in our Facebook group. I'm going to have a link in the show notes to our Facebook group. But if you are just now tuning in for the first time, please subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and a review. Like I said, in April, we're doing a huge giveaway. And if you leave a review now, it will actually count towards what we're doing at the end of the month. So you want to make sure that you get that review in. And I just can't wait to share more details. It's going to be so much fun. But check out the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 242. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.